the leadership styles of Rudy Giuliani, the ex-mayor of New York, were highlighted, manifested, and also appreciated during and after the crisis situation of the 9/11 attacks on New York. Similarly, the leadership styles of Ricardo Semler, the partner, owner, and CEO of Semler Partners, was manifested in a very distant geographical region, Brazil. Semler is a Brazilian company, and few decades back, when Ricardo took over the reins of the management of the company from his father, it was over the next few decades that his leadership style got carved out through the different situations and circumstances that were presented to him through this business opportunity. So we see two leadership styles in very different situations, and yet it is very interesting to see through different similarities and contrasts in their leadership style how some common elements of the topic of leadership become transparent and apparent to us. It brings us to the realization that leadership, in essence, whether it manifests in a person like Rudy Giuliani or in a person like Ricardo Semler, in very different and distant and geographically separate situations, yet there are some common strains in the development of this leadership potential. Basically, leadership is about understanding your true personality, your true inner core, and being in alignment with your true inner core, your true inner personality, and allowing it to manifest gradually, slowly, in context to circumstances that are presented to you by life in different situations. So in a way, it is a flowering of your inner consciousness or of your inner personality. And as this process of flowering happens more and more, there are different aspects of your being, apart from your rational and logical mind, that get exposure, that get an opportunity to be expressed. Your intuition, your creativity, the innovation potential within you, your emotional intelligence, and also your spiritual side. The spiritual side that unites all of these qualities together and finally aligns you to your true purpose in life. Normally, majority of our human life is focused on the rational definitions of life and of this world, and the rational structures that we impose on our daily routines and on our work spheres. But as these other hidden aspects of your true potential start developing, from creativity, intuition, to emotional intelligence, innovation, and your spiritual potential, leadership potential and leadership development is just another terminology that can be given to this process. And as you allow more and more scope for manifestation of this process, more and more leadership potential starts developing through and in and around you. And today we will try to look at some basic principles and leadership styles that have developed through the life situations that were encountered by Rudy Giuliani and Ricardo Semler, and through the parallels and the contrasts in both of these personalities and the life situations that they encountered, how some underlying common aspects and varieties of manifestation of leadership potential can be understood. The sheer maturity and greatness of a person like Rudy Giuliani in terms of his personality and as a leader is apparent in the way Giuliani has understood himself, his own personality, and several aspects of his leadership style. Even before the crisis situation of the 9/11 attacks on New York, Rudy Giuliani was already working on understanding and elaborating his leadership style for several years. And it is through this understanding of himself and of his leadership potential, of his inner core personality, that gave him the strength, confidence, the tools and the methods to devise the complex system of decision making during and after the crisis situation of the 9/11 attacks. It is surprising that Giuliani, while he is working as a mayor of one of the most rationally dominated regions, developed regions of the world, uses a word like divine opportunity when he talks about the way he handled the 9/11 crisis situation. And he does this because he sees that already the amount of time and energy that he had spent before the 9/11 crisis situation on understanding and analyzing his leadership style and leadership potential was in a way like a preparatory ground which was already built inside him as a divine opportunity, without which it would have been very difficult for him to face the 9/11 crisis situation. So it was as if there was some divine intervention that was preparing the groundwork, the stage, the platform within him in form of that leadership structure, potential, so that when that crisis situation was presented by life, he was already ready to address that crisis situation. This is a very beautiful acknowledgement and direction in his level of maturity and understanding about himself, both as a leader and as a human being. In my opinion, there are 5 critical elements that define the leadership potential of Rudy Giuliani. The response to crisis during the 9/11 situation, his decision-making process based on his understanding of visualization, the use of beautiful life principles like the Pareto principle in his daily life, his importance to the principle of being true to oneself and allowing it to manifest in his life. And finally, establishing developing your life around your life's true purpose. These are the 5 critical elements, in my opinion, that define his leadership style. The 9/11 crisis situation was presented at the end of his term as a mayor of New York. And this is probably one of the biggest crisis situations that has faced the human population in a modern world. And for any individual or a team of individuals, it is impossible to respond to this kind of a crisis situation using some limited rational means. This crisis situation, like every other crisis situation, was a complex set of circumstances and events that were far beyond human imagination and control. And similarly, that the responses that came in response to this crisis situation from Giuliani and his team were also based on his leadership potential and his understanding of himself, also beyond human imagination and the limited views of human rational mental control. So this is the first principle that defines his leadership style, where he was willing to go beyond the rational understanding of the situation at that time, and of course using rationality as a part, but basing his decision-making process on his years of accumulated leadership potential, allowing that intuition, that spiritual side of acknowledging that as a divine opportunity, the preparation that he had inside him, and allowing it to manifest as the base for that complex set of decision-making process. The second critical element is this very decision-making process, which he had already understood and has described very beautifully in his autobiography in form of few steps. His decision-making process is composed of 3 vital steps. And surprisingly, the first step is waiting. Waiting, visualizing, and then acting with good scope for change. The first step is waiting, that is, whenever a crisis situation or any challenge is presented, he waits for the right decisions or the right options to come to him. There is one way of reacting to any challenge, which is a mental or logical or rational way of reacting, where as soon as a challenge is presented, you immediately react to it. Whereas a more responsible way is to wait and allow different options and alternatives to be presented to you, generally through the inner layers of your mind, through the inner layers of your understanding. So the first step is to be calm, to be patient, and to wait in face of a challenge or in face of a crisis, and not react immediately. To wait and allow different solutions and options to be presented to you. The second step is visualizing. So visualizing all of these different options in your mind, looking at different outcomes that can be connected with these different options, visualizing the entire set of events, And here, as you are visualizing, it is not analyzing logically, but visualizing. When you visualize, all the layers of your mind beyond your rational mind, your intuition, creativity, innovation, spiritual side, emotional intelligence, all of these aspects play a vital role in visualizing. And through that visualization process, a lot of your accumulated life experience and intuition helps you devise creative solutions and creative ways of looking at those challenges. And then the final step is action. But very interestingly, Giuliani is mature enough to point out that though action is important, but action needs to have sufficient scope for change. Many a times what happens is that once we take a decision and we act, our ego forces us to stay committed to that decision in spite of evidence to the contrary at times. Whereas Giuliani so wisely points out that though it is important to wait, visualize and then act in a timely manner on those decisions, but at times after you act, it is possible that the challenge shows you some improvisations or customizations in your decision, and you should have the humility to change your action and to change your decision as you go ahead. There are three aspects of this decision making process which are presented in terms of three I's: information, intuition and innovation. So interestingly, of course, information is necessary. It is important to accumulate information before you wait and visualize and address the situation. You should ask questions and collect data and information so that your decision making process is clear. But after that, a great amount of importance is given to intuition, which is the side of your mind beyond your rational thinking, at times taking decisions which appear or seem irrational, and finally having sufficient scope for innovation, even if those decisions have not been implemented in the past by anybody. If you are visualizing, the third element connected to his leadership style is having the humility and the courage to implement innovative and at times irrational concepts like the Pareto principle in your daily working life. So Giuliani's work days used to start with his morning meetings, which were mandatory for his entire core team, for his entire higher management, higher staff to attend. And every day he used to have these morning meetings, and at times it appears a bit beyond logic and understanding, but to have the courage and innovation capacity to implement this consistently over the years gives the wisdom to understand that at times irrational innovative concepts can have a big impact on your work output, on the value addition in your work. And it was his claim that maximum amount of his daily work used to get accomplished in this morning meetings. So as the famous Pareto principle states, maximum amount of work gets done generally in a small amount of time, and then a small amount of work generally takes a lengthier amount of time. So focusing that early morning period, which is the most aware, conscious, creative, intuitive, powerful period for our human minds to focus on the most important tasks for the entire team, and to make that focus area for implementation of long-term strategies is a very wise and innovative element in his decision-making process. The next critical element is his understanding and acknowledgement of being true to oneself, which he calls be your own man. So it is recommended that he understood that when a leader is in a leadership potential, he needs to accept his or her responsibility as a leader and as an example in front of people. And also the fact that as a leader, he is in a position to visualize and see some things beyond the horizon which many other people around him are not able to visualize and see. And to have the sense of humility and at the same time courage to visualize these things and to act and implement on these decisions, which means that as an individual there is a tendency that the leader can feel alone even in his group, even in his team, because he at times is the only one who can visualize and see those things in response to some challenges. So this implies that the leader needs to accept that he as a leader will be an example for others, and at times this can be comfortable, at times this can be an uncomfortable situation, and it involves credit but also at times a lot of criticism. So a leader needs to have the strength to stand in, to accept criticism, to allow criticism to openly influence him, not block criticism in any way, to have the humility and the openness to take all that criticism, not resist or reject it, but at the same time have the vision and the courage to respond from a zone which is beyond the zone of criticism. So the actions or the strategies should not be merely a reaction to criticism. So neither in opposition to the criticism nor in alignment with the criticism, but from a zone which is beyond the zone of criticism. This is a very vital element of being true to oneself, where you understand your responsibility as a leader, you understand your responsibility of being alone in certain situations and yet having the courage to implement decisions, and to accept the fact that you will invite opposition, criticism, to be open to it, and yet have the humility and courage to act from a zone that is beyond the zone of criticism. This description and understanding of the process of being true to oneself as a leader is another excellent elements in Giuliani's leadership process. The final element in his leadership process is understanding and being true to your life's purpose. A true leader understands that his personal desires and likes, dislikes through his mind will generally lead him to very small and subjective goals, but accepting the importance of understanding his or her own true purpose in life, aligning with that bigger purpose, bigger than his or her own limited being, gives the person the strength to allow life's energy, to allow the energy of existence to manifest and flow through you as a leader. And by aligning yourself with a purpose that is higher than you and by allowing this life energy to flow through you freely, gives you the strength to start transcending your ego, to start transcending your identity as a person, and to look beyond that and to help and serve people, populations far beyond your limited entity. And this aligning yourself to your own true purpose and to life's purpose, which is higher than you, is the final element of his leadership potential. And as we can see through all of these 5 elements: response to crisis, visualizing and the decision-making process connected to it, application of life principles like the Pareto principle, being true to yourself and aligning to your true purpose. Through all of these processes connected to his leadership potential, Giuliani takes us into an understanding level of oneself and of one's leadership potential that is beyond mere rational and logical understanding of the world, and highlights the importance of the 3 I's: information, intuition and innovation, which are the vital and the more critical aspects of your own self beyond the mere logical and rational sides of your mind. And this is the source from where true leadership potential arises within each one of us. The genius of Ricardo Semler is in his understanding one of the fundamental flaws in the organizational structure of all major multinational corporations over the past 50-60 years, and correcting this flaw in his business, Semler Partners. This flaw was discussed a few decades back by business strategy thinkers like Philip Selznick, Henry Mintzberg, in their theory of business strategy. And this flaw is about the way organizational structure is implemented in big multinational corporations. Usually, the growth or the origin of a new business starts with a strategy idea, with an innovation concept, and then it is converted into a purely limited rational organizational structure that is imposed upon people. And this limited rational organizational structure is the flaw that many multinational organizations have in them. And this flaw restricts, curbs the immense innovation and creative potential that lies dormant behind the entire employee population in huge businesses and organizations and corporations. This flaw was already discussed at the beginnings of the field of business strategy in 1960s, 70s by thinkers like Selznick and Mintzberg, but was neglected over the last few decades in its practical implementation. Ricardo Semler, in his genius, has intuitively detected, understood this flaw, and has used this as a basis for the development of his true personality, of his leadership potential. The similarities between Semler and Giuliani in their leadership styles is about taking us into a direction that is beyond these limitations of pure rational and logical structures for leadership. And yet the contrasts and differences lie in the fact that Giuliani As compared to Giuliani, Ricardo Semler was in a far more free, liberal and independent atmosphere, as in he was implementing his theories, his concepts in his own family-run business. And over decades, where he also had more liberty and flexibility with time and resources. But in the beginning, even in Semler's career, it started by strict opposition, even from his father in his small family-run business, where he had to offer a choice of quitting the company or having the freedom to implement his own views and his own innovative concepts of leadership in that company. And once he was given that freedom, it has taken him few decades to fully mature and implement those concepts. And even today, he is of the opinion that he has been able to implement around 50 to 60% of those concepts, and it is an ongoing journey. The beauty of his leadership potential lies in my opinion, in three simple but fundamental concepts and understanding about life and about business. And these three fundamental concepts are about releasing collaborative and democratic potential in teams and in employees in your business. Second, dissolving as many as possible rational laws, structures and formulas in your organization. And the third, dissolving as many as possible ego-driven authority structures in your organization. The first, democratic and collaborative potential. In Semler Partners, the entire hiring, firing and maintenance process for new employees, for all levels of employees, including bosses and higher management employees, is done through a collaborative democratic process. So the people who actually will be working in teams are given an opportunity, are given a voice, an opinion, a contribution in the hiring, firing and maintenance of their team members, of their colleagues, but also of their bosses and also of the higher management. Because of this, the fun element, the responsibility, the easy and relaxed responsibility element in the entire employee population is triggered and it's released. All the employees feel empowered and have access to that collaborative and democratic potential within them. They know that in reality, they are responsible for all the team members and colleagues and even their bosses that they work with. And that gives a more true and a more realistic sense of responsibility and power to each and every individual and each and every employee in the organization. So the first principle is about releasing this collaborative and democratic potential in the entire employee population. The second principle is about dissolving as many as possible rational laws, externally imposed logical rules, structures, formulas in an organizational structure. These are the concepts that in theory were discussed by thinkers like Selznick, Mintzberg, etc. many decades back. But to have the courage, the vision, humility, and also the freedom and the scope to implement these concepts in one's own business is the genius of Semler. So this is implemented in all aspects of dissolving rules and regulations for working hours, dissolving rules and regulations for how you structure your work environment, your table and chair, your work furniture, the walls around you, how you paint them, what colors you use, what dress codes you use, what space working, how you design your own working space, what are the places in the office building that you work from, what are the timings that you work. All of these are actually elements that are inherent in each and every individual. In each and every individual sense of responsibility and power. They just need to be released out into the open, and these are stopped from being released by superficially externally imposed structures, logical structures of fixed timings, fixed dress codes, fixed environments, etc. As soon as these structures are dissolved, the inherent trust, the inherent fun and creativity and innovation and sense of responsibility within individuals and employees is triggered. The thing is that this requires time, because there is a lot of past mental conditioning because of these rational structures over the years and over generations in workspaces through many organizations. So it requires individuals time to get adjusted to this new way of working, and that is why it has taken few years and decades for Semler to implement these concepts and for these concepts to have their required outcomes. But indeed, over decades, from a few employees and a small revenue generating business, now Semler Partners has grown to a few $100 million revenue company with few thousand employees, and an extremely successful and happy and creative and innovative business. The third element is about dissolving ego structures, ego-driven structures and formulas as much as possible. So in organizations across the world, as we see them normally, many of the organizations are driven by strict authority structures, driven by bosses of the organization, and a lot of these are ego-driven authority structures. And we see in many workplaces that the egos of the bosses and of these authority figures are cultivated and developed and portrayed many a times even in front of the population, and the better and higher developed the egos are, the higher and higher these bosses rise. So in Semler Partners, the key is about dissolving these ego-driven structures, of dissolving these authority structures where the boss is the focus, and in another aspect also the male-driven ego authority structures where only the males are the focus of the authority structures, and thereby dissolving and distributing this power across the employee population, empowering the employees instead of only the bosses, employing the entire population instead of only a few male authority figures. So these three basic principles in Semler's genius leadership style of releasing the democratic collaborative potential, dissolving the rational rules and formulas, and dissolving ego-driven authority structures, in a way releases the immense innovative creative potential in employees. And maybe the way ahead for business strategy really only lies in just dissolving all these limited rationally imposed structures of our mind, of our ego, to allow this energy of life and of existence to grow and flow through your entire employee population, not only through the ego structures of some authority figures, but through the entire colleagues, teams, and the entire employee population. And this massive source of untapped life energy, of the energy of existence, of creativity and innovation, will become the true source of your growth and success of your individuals and of your entire business.